These are supposedly the most comfortable mock toes in the entire world. They're made by Ecco, who have made a name for themselves by making ultra comfortable footwear with sneakers and dress shoes in particular. And this boot has the promise, in their words, as ordinary boots take 100 hours to break in, but forget ordinary. Ecco Heritage boots offer straight from the box comfort. So we're gonna cut these things in half, run it through all of our tests to really see if this is a zero break-in boot, like Ecco says, or if this is just another example of a good shoe brand making an absolutely terrible boot. The holiday rush is over, all your Christmas orders are probably shipped out, and the problem with owning a small business, at least for me when I first started Rose Anvil, is every single product we shipped, whether it was a wallet or a belt, I put it in a package, hand wrote the address on there, took it to the post office, they rung me up, printed off the label, slapped it on there, and finally shipped it out. But there's one little step that we took early on at Rose Anvil that completely streamlined the whole shipping process, and that's the sponsor of this video, ShipStation. With ShipStation, there's rules and automations that can streamline the entire shipping process. You can also import all your orders super easily into ShipStation, and you can connect it with whatever website platform you're working on. And more importantly, it allows you to compare shipping rates across the board with all the most popular carriers. And you can save up to 88% on UPS and 77% off USPS rates, which is crazy, especially for a small business. It saves you time and money. Because when you're running a small business, every hour that you're wasting on something that could be streamlined is money lost and potential growth lost. So take your small business to the next level, streamline your operation by getting ShipStation, because right now they have a really awesome deal going on. You can get a 60-day free trial, no questions asked, to try out ShipStation for free. So go to shipstation.com/roseanvil or use the link in my description to get that free 60 days, which is a huge benefit for a small company wanting to try out a way to streamline their company. So huge thanks to ShipStation for sponsoring this video. Make sure you check them out in the description. So now let's go over the history of Ecco, and right at the top of their history section on their website, I think is a really good mission statement for Ecco. It says ambition without compromise. So we'll also kind of put this boot through that lens. But this Ecco all started in 1928 when Carl Toosby was born. Then as he grew up and entered the workforce, he became a manager at a footwear factory, and he saw some holes in the industry and thought he could strike out on his own, start his own shoe company. And so in 1963, Carl and Bert started Ecco in Denmark, and by the end of 1963, they already had 74 employees. And then in the late 60s to the early 70s, they started making shoes with skinnier heels called the Venus. And then in 1978, Ecco launched a new range designed by, I don't know, Ejnar Trulsen, called the Ecco Joke, and Ecco Joke was a large range of both men and women's shoes featuring variations of the original moccasin style. And then as Ecco started to expand and grow, they really grew in a vertically integrated business model, which means they own, instead of like buying leather from other tanneries, they actually own the tannery that manufactures the leather for them. There's a lot of advantages to it, and maybe we'll do a video in the future, but Red Wing is an example of a vertically integrated company. It allows them to control more of the process and potentially drop the prices down because there's no middlemen. They own the whole vertically integrated supply chain as much as possible. So this allowed them to grow in a very efficient way and a very profitable way. And in 1984, they expanded manufacturing to Portugal. In 1990, they expanded to Indonesia. 93, they expanded to Thailand. 96, they started producing golf shoes. 98, they opened up more manufacturing in Slovakia. 2001, they started manufacturing in the Netherlands. And then unfortunately in 2004, Carl died, and his daughter Hanny now runs Ecco. And in 2005, they expanded their manufacturing to China. 2016, they expanded even further into Vietnam, and present day Ecco products are sold in 99 countries from over 2,200 retail shops and over 20,000 employees. So Ecco is a kind of a sleeping giant in the footwear industry, because they're mostly popular with people who are wanting comfortable dress shoes, comfortable casual shoes, and they haven't really made it into that hype culture and with really interesting and more modern looking sneakers. They've kind of just carved out their own industry and their own segment of the footwear industry is maybe a better way to describe it. So now I'll start going over the information for this boot, starting with the leather. So they call this oiled nubuck leather, which nubuck means they just lightly sand the surface of the leather to give it a little bit of a matte finish, and it kind of hides some of the flaws. So it's not necessarily a terrible leather. Occasionally a nubuck will get sanded too far down. They remove a lot of that structural grain pattern at the top of the leather that gives it its strength. But we cut a little cross section in this leather, put the macro lens on it, and as you can see, there's still plenty of grain in it. And you can see we also put that lens on the top surface of the leather, and it's very lightly buffed. I wouldn't have even known or even thought it was a nubuck if they hadn't have said it on their website. And we also burned it to see if there's any heavy plastics on top or any top coats, and as you can see, it burned really naturally. So this is a pretty good leather, and it's fairly thick too, because it's 2.3 millimeters thick, which is right around that Red Wing and like the more heritage style boot thickness, which really surprised me for a comfortable boot. And it is a really malleable leather, so they already are proving some of their points of a very low break-in period or very small break-in period. And it's not quite as soft as like what you see in like a Thorogood. It's a really tumbled leather. So I still think there's gonna be a little bit of break-in with these. I think that might have been a little bit of an exaggeration on their end, because it is a soft leather, but it's far from a glovey like Thorogood leather. But all said and done, I still think this would be right around that A grade leather. I don't really see any issues with this leather at all. And to test the waterproofness, we did a little dribble test, little droplets on there. They didn't really absorb into the leather, so we dunked it in our waterproof tank for 5 minutes, and not a single drop of water made it to the inside, which is really rare for a lot of these brands that claim their boots are waterproof. And we also wanted to do a puncture test on this leather. And to put it in perspective, the Red Wing leather we've tested is about 75 pounds, 65 pounds. The Grant Stone filled boot was 45 pounds. These Eccos took 85 pounds to pierce through, which was really surprising. So it's a thick leather, it's an A-grade leather, it's a high quality water resistant leather. So overall, I'm pretty impressed with this leather right off the bat. And then if you look at the mock toe itself, you can see this is a two-piece mock toe, where this outside bumper is a separate piece from this little U shape on top. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, go watch the Everything You Need to Know About Mock Toe Boots on the Rose Anvil 2 channel. And if we start going to the inside of the boot, you can see that the quarters of the boot are not lined like a very traditional heritage boot. And there is a little bit of a fabric liner in the vamp, and it looks like there is a leather counter cover on the inside, but it looks like it's a really thin suede leather. So we'll see if we get it cut in half if it's actually leather. And then next, if we pull the insole out, they call this their premium leather inlay sole for a customizable experience. And this thing is thick. This has gotta be the thickest insole we've ever seen by like twice. It's got to be twice as thick as anything we've ever pulled out of a boot, because it's like half an inch thick, and it's mostly foam, and it actually is topped with a pretty thick layer of leather, because sometimes the layer of leather on top of these insoles is so thin that you don't even get any advantages of the leather. And I think because this is such a thick layer of foam, you're still going to get some of that custom footprint on the inside of your boot that you really usually only see in a leather insoled boot. So there's a lot of interesting aspects to this shoe and this boot. And this thick of an insole really does make them ridiculously squishy underfoot. And if you look underneath of that, this is where this boot gets really weird. Because usually you'll see like a lasting material, whether it's a fiberboard or a lasting fabric or a non-woven material or leather. But this one, it looks like it's just foam on the inside, but there's a huge gap that wraps all the way around the inside that it's probably a 1/4 inch gap from the insole to the upper, which does get filled in pretty easily with this insole. So it's not that big of a deal. I just don't know what that gap is from. It looks like it's almost direct injected into the insole, because if I feel down deeper inside there, I can feel that it's a non-woven lasting material. So I think that foam midsole is direct injected through or on top of that lasting material, so it bonds it together, because I still see strobel stitches in there, but it's clearly somehow injected together. And as for the midsole, I'm just assuming it's that same foam, so we'll see when we get it cut in half. And then the outsole is a really interesting outsole, because I believe this is just a cup sole that's cemented onto the upper of the boot. And so I think the way they do this is they make the upper, they injection mold the foam midsole into the boot itself through the lasting material, and then this cup sole outsole, I think, is glued onto the bottom. And this different color that would usually be the welt, I don't think that's a different layer. I think it's a single cup sole that just has 2 different colors on it. So it's not welted in any way, it's not sewn on in any way, it's just cemented on, which is pretty common for a foam-based boot. But we'll see when we get it cut in half. And just out of curiosity, I'm gonna try ripping this off to see what we can do. Because sometimes these cemented boots, you can just rip the outsole off of them. But this one seems like it's pretty well cemented on there. But you can see now that I've kind of pulled it apart that there is clearly just glue holding that on there. But they call this outsole their Ecco fluid form outsole, and it's a bonded rubber sole. And we put a durometer tester on it, and it came in at a 68 Shore A. So right in between those wedge soles you see on the Red Wings and the harder, like really heavy lug V100s that are coming in at like around 75. So it's a nice middleweight. But the real question about this is how thick is this layer? Is it just a thin skin like we've seen on a lot of the cheaper boots that do this same technique, or is it actually really thick and substantial that will last you a long time? Well, to try to gather a little bit of information on this, we did a puncture test through the outsole, and to put it in perspective, the Red Wings came in right around 210 pounds. The Grant Stone filled boot was 203, and we put this on the tester, and it only took 88 pounds to pierce through the Eccos. So for a foam-based boot, that's to be expected, but that pretty clearly tells me this outsole is not very thick, and there's just got to be an ungodly amount of foam through the midsole. So now let's cut these things in half and really see what's on the inside of these boots. How are they the most comfortable boots in the world? Are they going to be durable? Are they worth $270? Let's cut them in half. Okay, we got them chopped in half, so let's see what's inside it. This boot is so weird. This has got to be the most foam we've ever seen in between your foot and the ground of any boot, especially a mock toe boot. You know, those red backs are pretty close, but with this insole, that definitely puts it over the top. Because that's like 2 inches of material between you and the ground. And so that's why these are so comfortable. But there's some issues here that you might not have seen or recognized from the outside. And one of them is this outsole is so thin. And the problem with this is you spend $270 on the world's most comfortable mock toe, but once you've worn through 1/4 inch of this outsole, you start getting into this foam, and this foam is soft. It is really soft, and it's almost like a memory foam because it doesn't have a lot of rebound. It kind of slowly bounces back like a memory foam mattress topper would. So once you wear through that rubber and you start wearing into that foam, it's gonna wear out exponentially faster. It's gonna start absorbing water if you step in a puddle, and you're gonna lose a lot of that comfort, and it's gonna wear unevenly. So that's a huge red flag with these, and especially where these aren't technically resolable. Like, you could probably find a cobbler to spend the time to tear this apart and hope the whole thing stays structurally sound. But the problem is with this injection molded insole, you can't really separate it like you could like a Blundstone that most people won't resole, but technically they're resolable. So for $270, this boot really isn't traditionally resolable. But with that being said, these probably are the most comfortable mock toes on the market. Especially, they've got to be the most comfortable mock toes we've cut apart, just because of how much foam is in there. And when you're wearing them around, they are really comfortable right off the bat. And that kind of leads us to the first question. Are these a zero break-in boot? Not really. You do have to still break them in. You're gonna have to break in this insole a little bit. The upper's not quite as soft as we've seen in some of the other boots. It's still gonna take a little break-in period, but it's nowhere near like a Pacific Northwest break-in or a Red Wing break-in. It's going to be a lot closer to like a Blundstone or Ariat, some of these other boots that are more a foam-based boot. So not really zero break-in, it's just less break-in than a really heavy-duty boot. So are they worth $270? I think if you only care about comfort and you don't want to deal with the break-in and you just want ultra comfort underfoot and you're not planning on resoling them and you have $270 to spend, they could be worth it. But if you compare them to a Red Wing mock toe for $30 more, they're resolable. They're not quite as comfortable, but they're going to last longer. They're easier to resole. The components are higher quality. So if you value comfort first and foremost, I could see you justifying the $270. But for the majority of people, your money's better spent elsewhere. You know, because you can get just as comfortable of a boot from any of these other foam-based boot companies for a lot cheaper, like $100 cheaper. And usually when you're in that $300 price range, that's why you have to pay the extra for the heritage boots. because they take so much more labor and there's so many more manual processes that go into it. So for a direct injected, vertically integrated company, $270, it does seem like it's a little bit overpriced in my opinion. But that doesn't mean it's a bad boot. So now let's rank this on, because this is the final boot of the Mocktober, November, December, January, Mocktober series we've been doing. And then after this video, we're gonna do a full Mocktober finale and rank them all and go through all the details. So how does this one rank on the board? Well, I think this one pretty clearly fits right above the Lems and right below Thorogood. I think the Thorogoods are a little more durable and almost just as comfortable. They're gonna last longer and you can get some resoles out of them, just as good a quality, and I would argue an even easier break-in than these. And the Lems are very similar to this boot, but just a little bit lower quality. So I think there's a pretty fair spot right there. So are they the most comfortable mock toes in the world? They might be, but comfort always comes at a cost. And that cost is the resoleability, the price of these, the longevity of these boots, and overall the boots are just for style. These are far from a work boot. You would never want to work in these, but that's okay. You know, some people just want that Red Wing mock toe look without the discomfort and the break-in period, and they just want squish underfoot, and some people are willing to pay $270 for it. Not me, but some people are. So I think until something else comes up, I think these are probably the most comfortable mock toes in the world, but at a very high price. So let me know what you guys think, and if you have any experience in Ecco's regular shoes and these, put them in the description so people, or in the comments so people can know your experience in them. And in the description, I put a link so that you guys can go and rank all the Mocktober boots in whatever order you think they belong in. So in the Mocktober finale, we're gonna show how I rank them, my final ranking, and what the audience ranking is, so that we can compare and contrast to see if you guys disagree with me on any of my ranking, and to give you guys a little bit of a voice on the channel. Because I really like the idea of having an audience score versus the Rose Anvil score. So use that link in the description to go rank them all. So thanks for watching and supporting this channel and everything we do. It means a lot to us, and it's what allows us to buy $270 boots just to cut them in half to show you what you're really getting with the most comfortable mock toe in the world. So thank you guys. See ya.